You're listening to
Catholic Sprouts,
the daily podcast for Catholic kids that strives to plant seeds of faith. Hey there, Sprouts. Today is Tuesday, October 16th, 2018. It is also the feast day of St. Margaret Mary Alacoque. This week on the Catholic Sprouts podcast, we have been taking our knowledge of Jesus Christ and trying to figure out the question, if Jesus is God and man and the Savior of my soul, then what does it mean to truly follow him? Of course, all of us are called to different lives and different missions, but as followers of Jesus, we have certain things in common. Yesterday, we learned from St. Teresa of Avila that as followers of Jesus, we are called to do his work, even when it is hard and even when it is full of suffering. Today, with the help of St. Margaret Mary Alacoque, we are going to learn that as followers of Jesus, we are called to receive Jesus' love and in return give him all of our love. Now, perhaps you've heard the phrase before that God is love. This might sound overly simple, but it's perhaps one of the biggest mysteries of our faith. God is love. Every action he does, every characteristic of God can be understood through this simple phrase. God is love. Everything he does, even when he sends us suffering, is done out of love. Therefore, Christ, who is God, of course, has a profound love for us, and it is incredibly hurtful to Christ when we reject the love that he sends our direction. We know a lot of this because of Saint Margaret Mary Alacoque. So let's learn a little bit about her. St. Margaret Mary is a French nun, and she lived during the 1600s. As a small child, she was intensely devoted to the Blessed Sacrament. Shortly after she received her first communion, she became very ill and was forced to be in bed for 4 full years. It was only after she made a vow to Mary, the mother of Jesus, that she would consecrate herself to Jesus, that she became instantly healed and was suddenly able to get up and live life again. However, her parents died, and after her parents' death, she forgot about her childhood vow to consecrate herself to Jesus, and she started to socialize in the hopes of finding a husband. One night, when she came back from a ball, the crucified Christ appeared to her. He appeared to be sad, for he had been forgotten by her. However, he demonstrated that he still loved her. Almost immediately after this vision, St. Margaret Mary joined a convent. There, over the course of many years, she received visions of what we now call the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Maybe you've seen an image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. It is a heart wrapped in the crown of thorns and has a fire coming out the top. Now, what Jesus entrusted to St. Margaret Mary was not just the image of his Sacred Heart that is tortured and yet on fire with love for us. It was an entire devotion. The first Friday of every month is devoted to the Sacred Heart. St. Margaret Mary also shared certain devotions and that we should meditate on the agony in the garden. It also became a feast day celebrated by the entire church. But what is the Sacred Heart of Jesus? Now, this is a deep and beautiful meditation that we all can dig into in prayer. But I think perhaps the best place to start is to start with the words of St. Margaret Mary, describing what happened when Jesus appeared to her, and the words that she wrote down to tell us what all of this meant. These are words from St. Margaret Mary Alacoque's diary. She wrote, And he showed me that it was his great desire of being loved by men and of withdrawing them from the path of ruin that made him want to manifest his heart to men with all the treasures of love, of mercy, of grace, of sanctification, and salvation which it contains, in order that those who desire to render him and procure him all the honor and love possible might be themselves abundantly enriched with those divine treasures of which his heart is the source. Now, maybe that's a little bit confusing, so let me explain. What she says is that Jesus, his greatest desire is for us to love him and for him to save us from the path to hell through sin. And so in order to do that, he's showing us the image of his heart so that we might understand how intensely he loves us, and also so that we might look at his heart and realize that the source of everything good, of holiness, of love, of forgiveness, of salvation, that it comes from his heart. And if we are determined to do his work on this earth, we need to be connected and living in his love always. That is what the Sacred Heart of Jesus teaches us. And so, Sprouts, I have a challenge for you today. I want you to find an image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Chances are this won't be that hard. There are lots of images of the Sacred Heart, whether it's a statue, a picture, or you can do a quick online search. But I want you to really look at the heart. Why is it pictured that way? What does it mean that it is wrapped in a crown of thorns and on fire? This is the very image that Jesus gave to St. Margaret Mary Alacoque. Why did he give us this image, and what does it mean? That's it for Catholic Sprouts today. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, continue to grow in your faith and truly sprout into the beautiful creation that God intended you to be. And finally, Sprouts, today's episode of the Catholic Sprouts podcast was sponsored by a generous listener who doesn't want any recognition, but simply wants to use this time to remind you to always, always trust in the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of our beloved Mother Mary.